Welcome to Nashua Cloud.NET user group. This group is run by myself and my friend Dan, who is on the other side. We both collectively run this user group. We gained 601 members. Thanks for being an active member. Continue to spread this user group. We're trying to bring a great content every month. If you want to present, this is the right user group. You don't need any experience. You just let us know what you want to present. It doesn't have to be latest and greatest. It can be anything, but you want to begin somewhere. You want to present yourself, and this is the right place. We will set it up for you, and you can present remotely. But for this month, we are going to talk about securing Azure services using Azure AD Authentication, also known as Role-Based Access Control, RBAC. We'll see what it is, why it's important. I have put this text over here. You can download it. We have all the videos. We just need to edit a little bit to remove some GDPR data, so we don't have time. But otherwise, we have all the videos, and Candid will upload all the videos. With that, we will get into the topic. So today's topic is going to be secure Azure services using AD authentication, right? This is about me, and my full name is Udaiappa Ramachandran. You can call me Uday. I work for a company called Acumina located in Nashua as a CTO or CSO. I'm on Microsoft Azure MVP since Jan 2022. I've been in this cloud space playing with the technology Azure, AWS, and Google equally. I built a SaaS product in Azure and AWS, and I play a little bit Google here and there. I run this user group. That's the URL here, and then that's my personal about what I'm doing. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about the RBAC, why it's important, and how you going to use the identity for the RBAC. It can be a managed identity or user managed or service principal, when you use those things and what's the difference and what's the best option and all those things. And then we're going to explore the RBAC policies, and, how you can assign those access control to your service and how you can use the service and what's the benefit of all those things. Then we're going to talk, while talking about the RBAC, we're going to also talk about the local auth mode. What is it, local auth mode? And then we will run some services, how you can secure. The same thing applied for all the services that listed in the document. So RBAC, why? I'm sure you guys might have used at least one service in Microsoft, at least one service in Microsoft Azure. I'm going to pick in this case some data services, right? For example, Application Insight or CosmosDB or Azure Storage or indexing service or Redis Cache or translation service, you name it. How you connect to those services? If you want to connect to those services, you use something called access keys, right? Which is the basic authentication keys. They give you the key, and then you use programming API or REST endpoint. You pass it, if you use a REST endpoint, you pass it as a payload. You use a programming API, then there is a constructor that takes a value, and then you start calling the APIs. Now, what happens if the key leaks? There is a problem, right? Somebody, by default, out of the box, that key is not stopping where you can connect from. Okay, so assuming that your service is in a public network, you have a key, and you have a website that talking to the Azure storage. You use the key, right, as a connection string, and now it all working. But that key is not stopping you connect from anywhere else. Something that key leaks somewhere else. I'm demoing you. I check in the code. Accidentally I put the key. Now you can take the key. You can connect to my services. You can potentially do a bad thing, right? Constantly increase a lot of storage, and add more queries, and obviously that's going to have some impact on financial on my side. For the demo, key leaked, but the production key leaked, it's the impact of the functionality, and then the trust and all those side effects is going to happen. So it's requiring the key, right? Well, how we secure the key today? So we secure the key. If you have a website, you have the app settings.json or the web.config, which is a, old .NET 4.8 and .NET Core, we call app settings.json. We can put the key in there, right? But the best practice says don't put any keys part of your web application or your console application, whatever it is. Store the keys, those connection strings, into a key vault, and then you securely access it. In order to access the key vault, you're going to go through this managed identity, user managed identity, or the service principal, one or other form. We'll explore that. But the best mechanism is to store those connection string in a key vault and let your application on start read the connection string from the key vault and then use it, which is secure, right? But you still need to manage that key in the key vault. And you may need to often rotate those keys, right? But the rotation process is not easy. If use a key for now, and some reason that key got compromised, now you're going to expire that key and you rotate the key. Now you got a new key, your application is going to stop working. If you have one application, it's okay. You put the key, you recycle the application starts, it gets the new key, it starts completely working. If you have like hundreds and thousands of nodes running across the global, this gets a little bit complicated. The propagating that changes to all the node, right? I built a SaaS application that runs on tons of locations, and every location have like tons of instances. We need to make sure these changes are propagating correctly, right? So that's complication involved. The keys are all or nothing. As you said before, either use it, or once he gets it, he can make use of it. But without going through this RBAC, there is a one way you can secure these things. Even the keys are exposed, still they can use it. How is using the private network or private link, right? But that's another security principle we are not going to explore. That's a different topic we talked in the past. You can secure everything in a private network, private link. And now you expose the key, it's not going to work because the connection can only come from within that network, right? Your website may be in a public network exposed, but your data services, storage, CosmosDB, Key Vault, Redis, and search index, and you name it, right? They all live in another subnet, but only this one subnet can see the other subnet. If it lives in another VNet and you do a peering, and only those networks can see it. But even though you give the keys out, but still nobody can connect to it. But that concept is not going to talk to you. We're only going to talk about how to make the connection keyless, okay? But if you do a keyless plus the private link, it's a highly secure. But today purpose is to talk about all that, right? Okay, so those are the problems we talked about. What is the solution? RBAC is the solution, right? It needs the, you storing those keys either part of the application or key vault and let the application see the keys, right? You don't need a rotation because there is no key involved. You can disable the key access entirely. That's what is called a local auth. The local auth is by default, some services are enabled, other services are disabled if you create without setting the parameter. If you disable local auth true, that means nobody can use keys mechanism. The only option left is to use the RBAC mechanism. So some companies, they're so sensitive, they're so paranoid about the security, they don't want to expose, they don't want to accidentally expose anything outside. They may go on to disable local auth. That means you even have keys, nobody can use it because it disables that level of connections. The only option, once it's disabled, the only way you can connect is RBAC. But that's how you disable that. And then fine-grained control can be granted on app by app. By using the RBAC, you have a read-write application, then you can grant the application to be read-write. You have a read application, you grant the read scope to that application. You have another application that only needs a write, then you can grant the write policies to that applications, right? So you can define the access based on the application. It's not like a full access you're giving to every single application. You can define that partitions, which application, based on the application needs, you can grant the access. But there is some side effects, caveats, not side effects, some caveats in these approaches. Not everything you can do in the portal. I know we love the portals. It's easy, click through it, right? It's just go there and click few buttons and everything is good to go. But some of the local auth mode, if you want to disable it, for example, a CosmosDB, you can do it in a portal. You need to run some special script to disable it. If you want to enable disable local auth for application inside, you can do it in a portal, right? And then some of the controls, like if you want to grant some policy, read policy or write policy, not all the policies available part of the UI. You have to define your own custom policy. Those things, again, you need to use a PowerShell command to run it, or AZ command to run it, and then use a MOM template, or then it available on the UI. So you need to mix some CLIs to do some jobs. If local auth is disabled, right? If the key-based access is disabled, some services like a CosmosDB, you cannot use the data explorer. That's a big downside, right? So if you use a CosmosDB, the data explorer is a great option to explore the data on the browser. You just go open the browser, look at the data, and so on, right? But once a local auth is disabled, that functionality goes away. Then you need to come up with a different mechanism of using a CLI, do something else. Okay. And then the emulator, another caveat is if you use a CosmosDB, the emulator does not support RBAC. Storage account supports the RBAC, but not the CosmosDB. Okay. It must use a key. So there are some caveats, but no, then it depends how you want to configure, secure your services within your infrastructure. It comes into two concepts that I forgot to put it over there: data plane, control plane, right? Control plane is how you manage those objects. For example, if you come to Azure storage, sometimes you open the storage, if the container is not there, our code may call, create if not exist. Okay, so you're trying to use a table, our code may call on the constructor, create if not exist. The same thing applied to the CosmosDB. You modify the indexes, or you define some containers, or you name it, anything you want, right? Those kind of object level manipulation cannot happen when you use RBAC. RBAC only supports the data plane operations, meaning that you can do a data read or write, and then metadata read or write, right? The write also includes the delete, but not the control plane operations, which is the manipulating those objects, the object level management, which cannot be done if you use RBAC. For that, you have to use a key-based access. I will update this time. So we said that, okay, how you can leverage these things, we saw the pros and cons and caveats, right? But how you can, sleeve up and do these things, right? The first thing is the managed identity. Managed identity is automatically created by Azure. If you have a resource, for example, compute, right? It can be a virtual machine, or it can be a web app, or it can be a container, or it can be a function app, you name it, right? So that's the compute. But that compute now needs to talk to a service, which is the database, for example, as an RBAC, right? So you go to that compute, you enable identity. That's the managed identity. Also in a demo, that's the managed identity. You go to the compute, you enable identity. You go to the web app, you enable identity. You go to the function app, you enable identity. You go to the container, you enable identity. Right? That's a managed identity. This is for a particular resource. Since that identity belongs to that compute, or the identity that you turned on for the web app, or the identity that you turned on for the function app, it's scoped for that resource alone, right? So, for example, if you turn the identity for the compute virtual machine, the virtual machine you want to connect it to a storage. Now you need to take that identity, you go to the storage, you apply the access the RBACs, needed for that virtual machine. Then any code that runs that virtual machine now can talk to that storage, but not the other ones, right? It is very useful, resources securely, of course. That's how we enable the communication between that compute and your other data services. It simplifies the authentication, within the application code. There's a small syntax you need to follow when it comes to this model. You can write a generic way, one can connect using the key-based or keyless, but in this case, you use a managed identity. I will show you some examples how you can handle both scenario in the same code base. The next one is user assigned managed identity. As it said, instead of going to a virtual machine, turning on that identity that only applied for that resource, but now you need identity that can be shared across the resources, right? You want to use the identity for the, you want to create an RBAC for the one identity, and you want to use it by a virtual machine, you want to use it by a web application, you want to use it by a function app, and so on. You name it, right? In this case, you create a user managed identity. You go to Azure, create a user managed identity, take that identity, and then enable access from your code. And you're going to call, create a, token provider for that identity, and it's going to give the token. The system will use it. We will see that. The only difference between managed and user managed is for that particular resource. User managed can be shared across multiple resources, so it gives you a flexibility of better management, okay, of life cycle and so on, and multiple resources. Of course, that's why you create the multiple one. The service principle is the one that you go to Azure Active Directory, go to Azure AD, and then you create a client app, right? The client app comes into client ID, and you're going to use that ID to give the RBACs. And when you connect, you're going to use the client secret, okay? That secret, you can create a secret on the Azure AD portal, or sometimes you can also use a certificate-based credentials. However, you do need a credential. It can be a client secret or it can be a certificate-based credentials. But this is very useful when you do a CI/CD. But it's not useful. It's not very useful when you connect from the computes, like how we defined the managed and user managed identity, because it needs a secret, right? So now you need to put the secret somewhere. So for example, you have a web app, want to connect to some service principal enabled services. Now you need to carry these client ID and client secret everywhere. If you leak that client ID and client secret, now somebody can connect to it, right? So it adds a little risk. That's why this is best scenario for CI/CD pipeline, because the CI/CD is going to live within your secure premises with a limited access. It's okay to create, enable, and then access it within the CI/CD, not the workload like this. The workload like the compute talking to the other resources. The best bit here is to use the managed identity, which is a one resource, or user managed identity, which you can share across multiple resources. All right. Now, how it works, all right? So you take this diagram. If you look at it, the first one is the Azure resource. In this example, we're going to say virtual machine, but the same concept applied. Instead of virtual machine, you put a web app. Again, it runs in a machine, right, under the hood. Okay, the function app, yeah, it's again runs in a machine, right? So you can take it. It's one-click identity enabled. That's all you need to do. Okay, so you first enable the identity. Once you enable identity, it registers in the Active Directory, which we are not going to talk about it. So let's go here. Step one, in the virtual machine, enabled. Then create a new managed identity service person Azure AD. So as soon as you go enable identity, it goes to Azure AD and creates that application, which is a hidden application, by the way. Okay. Well, if you look at this diagram, before that AD triangle and then the first box, there is a host, right? That's where your virtual machine is and your code runs. Where the Azure virtual machine or Azure web app or function app, you name it, any compute that also runs a service called IMDS, right? Which is the metadata service. So what that job? Your code locally going to talk to that endpoint to get the token, okay? That's what is happening, the service principal communication. If you go explore how the service principal works, that's how it works, okay? So as soon as your code starts, because in your code somewhere you have that, identity, you creating the token for the principles using a managed or user managed or pure AD based service principle, then it registers it. Okay. And then you're going to grant this access to the resource, right? Now you enable the identity. Now you go to the resource. So for example, this VM runs a code that talks to the Azure storage or CosmosDB. So you go to the CosmosDB and give the required access, read, write, or whatever you want, you're going to give the access, right? That's the step number 4. You grant the access that you want. Once this code starts running, now it invokes the local endpoint, which is the IMDS service, and it gets the token from the Azure AD, right? And then it makes the calls to the underlying resource, which is CosmosDB in this illustration. Okay, this is how the entire flow works. You have the, in order to summarize your resource, enable identity that registers the app, and then you grant access to that identity. Then you run your code that creates a token and uses the token to talk to the endpoint. That's it. The API taking care of the talking to the endpoint and getting the token, renewing the token, all those things handled by the API classes. All right. So some flow, right? There's not a lot of difference between managed identity versus the user managed identity flow difference. The same thing, but it's a little text passing it in, right? You have the virtual machine need to access the service, for example, Key Vault or Cosmos, anything you call it as, right? The application runs on the resource, sends a request to the target Azure service. Azure Service Manager sends the authentication request to Azure AD automatically. Azure AD validates the managed identity request and provides us an access token to the managed identity. The managed identity is the received token to authenticate with the target Azure service. And target Azure service validates the token if authorized, allowed the managed identity to access the service resource. That exactly we can't through it, but this is summarized. This summarization I copied from the ChatGPT. The reason I bring it over here, in bot also, Google's bot also does a very good job. I'll tell you, how you can simplify your coding life, by using these techniques. Same thing with the user assigned identity. Instead of turning it on the resource level, now we create one and then we apply the same principles. And the service principle flow, it's a CI/CD pipeline. You create the service and then the access token, you need it and use it, and then create it client ID, client secret based token, and then send it over there. Right? So this is how you create the token credentials. If you connect key-based service, key-based access, for example, you're going to give the keys because that keys is your username, password, and everything, right? But when you go keyless with RBAC-based access, you have to say default Azure credential, which will resolve. We don't know you are using a managed identity. You don't know you are using the managed identity, user managed identity. You don't know service principle. Forget the service principle. So between the managed identity and then you don't know the user managed identity, then the easiest way is to say default Azure credential, try to resolve that. The next thing it's going to go is the, we can resolve it and create the right token. But if you didn't know, the best things to call managed identity credentials. If you don't know use the user managed credential, then the best thing to use the managed identity credential of client ID. Right, which is what you're going to, when you create the user managed identity, you will have the GUID and you're going to pass in the GUID and all the services. If you don't know, if you use the managed identity in the second syntax, system managed token credentials, you manage identity credentials. Now the IMDB service that we call the service, that service knows the identity of that resource, and then it takes it, connects, get the token, and then sending back to the resource, underlying resource, in this case, CosmosDB. All right. How many, Azure has like hundreds and thousands of services, right? So I believe not all the services supports RBAC, but this is the list from the link that I put on the bottom. These are the services today you can leverage the RBAC. Okay, that's a massive list of services over there. API management, app configuration, app services is what function app, web app, containers, everything coming, patch, container registry, cognitive services, which includes the Azure Search as well as the artificial intelligence services, ACS, which is the SMS service, and CosmosDB, Databricks, Data Explorer, Data Lake, database, progress, digital twins, even to have IoT, Key Vault. Key Vault is very obvious we all use today. Kubernetes, machine learning, maps, media service, monitor, ARM, service fabric, service bus, SignalR, SQL, static web, storage, and virtual machines. Those are the services now you can control through RBAC, meaning that once you are there, it's all going to run within that infrastructure configured. All right, let's see some demo. Any question? You guys can leave a chat and I will try to unmute if you have any question. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to explore some services over here, how you can create a managed identity, right? So this is my subscription. I'm going to run the code from VM Udai, right? There's something called identity. You go there, and then by default, it will be on if you use the portal. But if you can automate the templates to be turned on by default. But most obviously, if you click through next, it's going to be off state. You turn it on, then it gives you the object principal. Okay? This is what we're talking about over here. This step number 2, right? Step number 1, you resource on the step number 2, identity, that's all it does, okay? And you copy that value, you go to the resource and grant access, that's it. Now this VM can do whatever the access you grant, okay? All right, so now how to create the user managed identity, right? So that you can go here. Okay, user manage identities, right? And then you create one, and then now you define group and give the name. My yes, in the end of the wizard, it's going to give you the GUID, and then you use that GUID to connect. But how you refer from the code? In the code, you're going to refer this index. Right? You put that GUID over here, and that's how it resolves. You give access to those user managed identity, and then your code is going to look at it. In this case, you don't need to turn on the identity here at all. It's not going to hurt you, but that's not something you're going to use it, right? So, like how I did on the VM, turn it on, you don't need to do it. The same thing applied if you have the app, you go enable identity, the function app, go enable identity. Any services that we saw in the list, you can go turn on the identity. Right. Okay, so that's what we're going to connect. Well, let's go to some of the code exploration over here. Right. So what we're going to do here, so we have the VM. I run a little RBAC.api. Okay. Would first break it. Okay. So if you look at this connection string over, I'm not using a key vault. I just for demo purpose, I'm directly accessing over here. If you look at this, JSON, which we're running in debug mode, so obviously it's going to load that file. And a CosmosDB connection string, I'm not giving anything, right? I only give the URL. Isn't it beautiful? If you have the private link, private network, it's still a more value. This URL cannot be accessed outside. Okay, only accessible within the network. But still, you are not putting any key, so you don't have to manage all those things. That complexity is gone. So I only put the URL. I'm also going to show some downloading a blob. Just add a couple more services instead of simply using a one service. So I just nested 3 services here for you to take away. All right. I want to connect the storage connection string. In a typical world, you will use this full connection string, right? Whereas the keys, but in our demo with the RBAC, we're only going to have this part, and then we're going to add windows.blob.net, whatever the suffix for the blob, suffix for the table, suffix for the file, suffix for the queue. For our demo, we're going to explore only the blobs. So this application insight is slightly different. You still need to give a fully qualified key, but this key cannot work if the application is not authorized, right? For example, only this VM can emit those metrics. If I take this code, I put this code, now I know I see the full connection string, and I run it outside, it's not going to work, right? But there is another concept called local auth disabled, which is, we will explore it, but skip that for now. If you use purely RBAC, just because you have the code, it's not going to work, because we say that disable local auth is equal to false. But if you take it true, then it will work. Okay, these keys will work. But if you disable the local auth is equal to false, then this has to come from the trusted resource. Okay. Now let's take this simple demo. We have a service. This code again, it's available. I'll give you the link. If you go to that meeting link, it's available over there. So it's and this is all here. You can download this code. Right now you can download it. Okay. So very simple demo. We have a CosmosDB select, right? We're going to pass some EP and we're going to select it and see whether it works, and we're going to write some raw data, right? And then some blob download, just for illustration purpose. And then for App Insight, we have the, we read the connection string and we set it over there, okay? But also, if you look at it, we have the CosmosDB, and then we set the CosmosDB connection string. But you may ask, I don't have fully connection string, how this is going to work, right? So that's a great question. So if you go back to CosmosDB client, okay. CosmosDB client, 1 second. Yeah, so we'll look at this one. Okay, so the service collection extends. Okay. So I just to see, in a typical connection string, if you look at it, this is not going to look like this, right? So I go back over here, I go to my CosmosDB, and then I look at my connection string. This is pretty lengthy connection string, right? I don't mind you guys seeing the connection string. This is pretty, not that connection string. See, this is pretty lengthy, right? It says account endpoint, it has account key. That's how the connection string works. So what we have here, you can come up with a convention, but I come up with this convention. I put the directly server name that begins with HTTPS, and I'm going to assume, which is RBAC, right? Same thing up here over here. So if the connection string starts with HTTPS, and I say Cosmos client connection string, and then it takes another parameter called the token credentials. Remember this diagram we're talking about? It generates a token here, right? And then it passes the token there, right? So this is the line number 4 is what it is. Okay? It creates a token. Now we set a managed identity credentials. You can also call default credentials. It will simply work without any problem because it's going to resolve it. You can, as the user, Azure credentials. We cannot call this because you need to pass in a client ID, or we can call a default Azure credentials or managed identity credentials. Either way it will work. Okay.
I do have one question from the chat.
Yeah. What was it? Sorry.
Oh, sure. They want to know if the same approach can be applied to create multiple Azure service bus topics.
Yeah. Service bus support. Service bus supports it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If you don't use that then you obviously go key-based connection, right? Because this is your pure connection string, which is key-based connection string. That's what you need in order to do a control plane operation. Remember, we talk about two planes, data plane and control plane. On-rack local auth only supports the data plane operations. They don't support the control plane operations. If you do control plane operations, then you have to use the fully connection string. But what Microsoft saying is, in order to do a control plane operations, you have to use, if you're in this mode, you have to use. The question was specific to having multiple managers in the same name. I'm not very expert in the Azure Service Bus topic, but in a concept-wise, I believe you can use it. But I'm not myself expertise in Azure Service Bus topic. I'm sorry. But I believe the concept itself remains same. So you use that, right? It's a fully connection string. But in our demo, it's always going to run this code because you use the RBAC. Storage client, same way we did that. We say that the service starts with HTTPS. In this particular example, you're going to use a blob container. So we say the connection string, which is on this here. We only put this service account name, right? So if I go back to my service here, I look at the Azure storage. Azure storage, access keys, this is pretty big connection string, but we only put that name on it, right? HTTP name on it, and then you can connect to the blob, so you can say .blob code windows. Then now we give another, default Azure credentials. Again, you can put managed identity credential will work. These two are, will resolve it. But if you, better control, this one is the better control. Okay. All right. So we have seen that. Now let's see how we do about the app insight. We read the connection string from the app insight section. Okay. And then we inject it over here. But look at it here. This is the special lines. Okay. App insight comes with a full connection string. They are not removing that because the fact the connection string is defined in the app insight has the very generic endpoint is to US 2.3 in application insight.azure.com. Okay, how it will identify that it's going to go to your app insight versus my app insight? The only identifier exists today is the instrumentation key. Right, so that's the reason you need to give the instrumentation key. And Microsoft is also expiring the instrumentation key as of 2025 March or May. So if you use instrumentation key based approach, you better change to the connection string based approach. Okay, we still need a full connection string, but you can disable the access outside by using the local auth disable. I'll come to that soon. Okay, so now if you disable local auth, how it knows it's going to use. It's going to work within the infrastructure. This is where it's going to use the infrastructure. If it is a .NET framework, there is something called active connections. You need to set that. Okay, active dot token provider is equal to in the same way. Token credential is equal to default credential or managed and vice versa. Either one will work. Okay, you set that. That's how it's going to trust this service. All right, now. Let's explore what is a local auth we're talking about. That's RBAC. RBAC is the full concept. Local auth is giving you an option. So you can do RBAC, even all the keys are turned on, right? Local auth is to shut down that key-based access completely, okay? So everyone goes through RBAC access. Nobody takes the key, accidentally give it to somebody else and connect from outside. If you entirely want to shut down that key-based access, and that concept is called local auth disabled. So I go back to my service here. So how do you disable the local auth? You will have to use a PowerShell to disable the local auth. For the app insight, this is kind of fancy. If you have a client metrics coming from your browser, then this approach is not going to work. You want to ingest data from your client, right? Your activities, you do via big and some JavaScript, then this object is not going to work. The client is always going to run on someone's browser, which is uncontrollable environment. you can do all those things. So what is the best practice? Maybe you create two different app insights. But this app insight we're talking about here only for the server level tracking. You have the server based applications, but you want to have that sensitive tracking parameter to be available within the environment. Okay, within the trusted connections, then this is a good approach. But if you collect some metrics from the client side or browser or device, or some client app, then this cannot happen. You have to make that as publicly available. Okay. Now, if you go to properties here, they have something called disable local auth, local authentication enabled, right? So you can go here. If it is enabled, it's not going to do anything. Technically, you in the app inside the world, you can be able to use it. But if you disable it, now the fancy thing coming, right? So if you don't have the token provider code, it's not going to work. Okay, there is a UI for this. How you do this for CosmosDB, right? But there is no UI. But for that, you have to go to some PowerShell script here. So I'm going to bring it in a bigger window. You to the set properties disable local auth equal to true. Okay, that's how you go make it run, right? So what I'm going to do, this is the concept to walk through. So if you go to the next one here, you need to have certain roles applied, right, for RBAC. So they have an inbuilt role called read only 001, read write 002, and you can attach to your object ID, which is the identity that I copied from the VM, okay, or the managed identity. For application inside, you give the monitoring metric population permissions on the access control, then it will start working. But if you look at it in this blade, over here, it also tells you we need to do that. Okay, so it'll be pretty useful documentation tips over there. And that applied to all the other services. For storage, you need to give a read or write, blob read or blob write, table read or table write, queue read or queue write, and so on. You take any services, you're going to grant some level of read write that you want to use within your applications. Okay, so now let's go back to the demo here. So I'm going to break this by giving the let's run it. Let's not break it. Let's run it. Okay, so if you look at it, it's coming over here. Yeah, we are into this RBAC based access. Okay, so if you want to download a file, we have a file called I believe test.txt. I mean, at this point, nothing rocketing, right? We established the connection string and we're good to go. So this here's the value. A sample text it coming over there. If I want to get some data from the CosmosDB, and I go here, try it out, I'm looking for UPN, and then I'm looking for some value called, Udai.io. I mean, I can pass in all the other parameters. It only looks for one parameter, and then I say execute. Right, and it returns to the partition key. I'll do the code in a second. And similarly, that's a read operation. Similarly, if I want to do a write operation here, again, this code is available. You can download and play with it. So I'm going to pass it in a UPN. Nashua Udai.io, just some sample data. I only, come on. ID is equal to something 5, so I already have 4, 3, but I'm going to put a 5. And then I need a partition key. Partition key, and this is P5. P5, execute. Would be 10, yeah. Accepted, compare request, whatever. VPN ID partition key P5. That should be working. Okay, we will come back to it. Let's see the P5 is queryable from from here. Nashua execute. Yeah, it is there. So the data is there, right? So very simple code. Very simple code. Let's break this one and then show you how to run the permissions, right? So I go back to my, over here, okay? I'm going to say CosmosDB Udai2, which I created it, okay? Right? Dot documents. And then this one also I'm going to say Udai2. Okay, she created it. And I will leave this intact. So before I dive into those two, let me show you the app insight is collecting really or not. So if you go back to the, not that one. If you go back to the, oh, I picked the wrong one. So if you look at the Udai, if you look at the properties, which was already turned off. This is the one we are using right now, but next time we will use the other one. You can look at the live metrics where it's coming in. It'll start working. If it's configured correctly, right? It's going to, and the live metric board is ready. If we did not configure correctly, the live metrics board is going to be pretty bad. We'll break it and show you. It will say it's not configured or no application is listening or registered, things like that, right? So now if you go to the overview, you can see, we've been browsing this. Requests are coming and so on. So it's working. It's working because we disable local auth. That means the only option is to use all back and the data are coming in. So obviously it is working. And what is a request? You can look at it. Get, these are the things we did, right? So get, download, and look at that, further dive into it, drill into it, 2 samples, then you look at it. So pretty nice. It's working. So is using the local auth disabled mode, nobody can connect outside, it's all working, you can explore it. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so now in this mission, we change the Cosmos Udai2 and storage Udai2, and we are not going to touch, maybe we can do that as well. Let's go back to the demo here. That's why we created the other service. Go back to that Udai app 2, and then I'm going to copy this connection string. Okay, I'm going to put it back here. I technically does not need this though. Okay, so now I'm going to start up, I'm going to comment this code. Right, we have 3 demos. All 3 is not going to work now. I'm going to run it, stop. I'm going to run it. And then we'll fix it. But these may work because we didn't do anything, right? Default credentials. But when you're trying to access the file, it might say it's not there. So now if we go back to the APPA2, if you look at the live metrics, that's one way to verify whether it's data coming in or not. If you configure there is application register, it's going to tell you, okay, there is something is coming. It's already, hiccup mode. So obviously you didn't have, right? So nothing is listened to it. Now, what are you going to do here? Why is nothing is listened to it? Even though you have the connection string. Why? Remember, in the beginning, it was enabled and then I went under disable. That's the reason. If I go enable, it will listen to it. And once you enable, that connection string can go anywhere, right? So it will listen to it. But we disabled it, so it is not going to listen. And we didn't even grant the access. So which you got grant the access over here. In a second, we'll fix it. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go back to the VM and then copy that identity, right? So we copy the identity. Now we're going to go back to that app service, which is right to app. We're going to go access control. and then you're going to go role assignments, add role assignment. Okay. And then what was the metrics that we need to enable? Monitoring metric publisher, right? So we're going to next, manage identity, the select members. If you know already object ID, you can go here and then paste it. But if you select manage identity, give you a little drop down, so you don't need to copy all those values and so on. Okay. Select, next, review and assign. Okay, it's done. So now we grant the access, and we're also going to do the code. I'm sharing, sorry guys. Now we're going to go here, and then on the startup page, we're going to stop it and then enable these things over here. I mean, we can verify it, but we don't need to use time. Just go fast drag, trust everything. Now you look, you're going to run the application loads, and then application loads, and then I go back to my APPA2. Now look at my live metrics. It should now say, okay, application is registered and waiting for this. See? Well, so now it's ready, waiting for it. If I'm going to click there, it's going to be before I click. Now let's jump in. So this is the first step. How your local auth and then RBAC with the application inside. Now I'm going to show you some storage services, right? Let's pick Azure storage. Okay. Let's go to a new tab. And then we are using giving this problem to me, switch. Okay, so now we are using this ST Udai tool, right? So you're going to go there, you're going to set up some data containers. I'm going to create a new private containers because we have all these parameters set on the config cloud. So it's created. Okay, and then I'm going to upload a file here. I'll browse files. Where is it? Where is it? Downloads. So I put this file here. Okay, I upload it. So I have the test.txt. Now I'm going to go back to the code, and then I look at the storage account, and then say try it out, and then try it out. Test.txt, and then I execute. It says, it's not allowed, right? Operation is not allowed, which is great. But now we're going to how we can grant that operations over here, right? So you go to the storage 2, and access control, and then the role assignment. And then, in this case, I only need a blob read, assuming that I only need a blob read. But again, RBAC, you only do a read or write, right? So you're going to go blob reader, storage data blob reader. Next. And again, it's a little convenient. You don't need to copy the GUID, and then what we did previous, add members, virtual machine, select that, select, next, and then review and assign. Okay. So now we granted that machine to be here. But still, we didn't change the full connection string. We just change, giving the permissions to it. Now what are you going to do? Execute. It's still a 400. Maybe a little bit time it will take. I test.txt. And we complete correctly. Role assignment ST Udai 2. Okay. Come on, load. Okay, so ST Udai 2, yeah. Storage blob data reader. Yeah, that's what we want. And make sure we have the right thing on the connection string. ST Udai 2, yeah, we have the right connection string over here. We are not using it, so it's in the MD Udai 2. All right, let's go back and do it one more time. Got it. It's just a timing, if you get this kind of problem, I know I get frustrated a lot of times, but usually give it like a 5 to 30 minutes. Still not working. The max is 30 minutes. Most things resolve around 5 minutes. Okay. So we saw the story. Now let's up to a database, right? So we're going to go back over here. Let's try it out and try to insert some data. I'm going to say ID 7. Sorry. ID 7. VPN demo at red.io. Partition key. Yes, it doesn't matter. I just randomly put some value for this demo purpose. When I go execute, does not indicate. It is a 400 error, right? The activity reason request blocked by the at CosmosDB. Request is blocked because the principal does not have required outback permission. This gives a little bit more details than the other one, which I like it. Okay, but now how you can make that enable? So now we're going to go back to service here, home, which we are using right now, Cosmos Udai 2. So you go there. I just need to fix it first, right? So I have the Cosmos account, but technically there is nothing in this. So I'm going to create something called AK containers. And then I'm going to call something called the users and tell you why these names are be hard-coded. So then say OK. So these are serverless Cosmos. So I don't have to set any throughputs. You pay what you use. I would have done that before demo. Any question, guys? It should be done. It won't take a long time to create the containers.
We have a question from Mohan. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, chat your question. I can unmute you if you want. If you want to speak, I can unmute you. Now, Dan, you want to unmute him?
Oh, sure. There we go. Go ahead. Go for it.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you can type too. That's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, can hear you.
Hi. Nice. Thank you for the session. So I have a very quick question. So this managed identity. So for example, right, the VM is calling the storage account.
Yeah.
So where do you set that permission? So we can set it from VM and also we can set it from.
No. We don't. You don't set it from the VM. So you take a.
Okay.
So if you go to the VM here, you go to the VM here, right? So you set it on the resource. So your resource, for example, CosmosDB or storage. That's a storage, right? So you go to storage, you go to access control, you go to role assignment, and then you pick the role that you want to assign, right? So I'm going to say, let's pick some roles meaningful here. Blob, blob data one, for example, okay? And then it tells you managed identity. That managed identity, you're going to say that to its permission. If it is a web app, you can select the web app and then select the web app, okay? And then you select it, and then you select it, and then you complete it. So how this access, we already gone through it. I don't know how late you are. So there is a diagram here, which you can download right now. Right? So you choose virtual machine, and then there is a service IMDS service. So as soon as you enable, this registers to the Active Directory tenant. Okay. Then it also indicates the local metadata setup. Then it takes the token RBAC control. That's the fourth step is what I was walking through. Just now you enable the access and then your code will handle everything else. Like the IMDS service, your API will handle everything else. That code is the form of sharing. That code is, for example, this type of code will handle it. So every API comes with parameters to take, whether it is the full connection string or the token-based connection string.
Okay.
Is that answers your question?
Yeah. So I have one more quick just additional question if you have some time.
Yeah, go ahead.
So generally, like, we'll be using like app services connecting to the databases, right? So that's where, like,
yeah,
we use this managed identity.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing is that, so from the VM, we want to, from the app service, we want to, like, talk to the storage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now when setting this managed identity, right, you are given like you are enabling the role, right, add role.
Exactly.
So that add role, that resource, right? So from the app service also, you can go and say add role. And you can pick the role for the storage account.
Yeah, I'll demo you. I will publish this to app service and then I will demo you.
Okay,
same exact stuff. Yeah, you enable identity and then you go there. I'll publish it. Okay, so let's quickly run this demo and then you will publish to app service. So I'll walk you through that quickly for you. So now we create all the data and still trying to click on the execute button here. I may still get the same exact error. Yeah, RBAC, right? Now I'm going to go back and grant the RBAC. So I open the CosmosDB. I'm going to use this time this little icon, right? So I go there. I set the PowerShell. I have all the script here, part of my talking note. So I'm going to copy it, right? So I have it over here. So for this demo, we are not going to set the local auth for first time, and later we'll come and set the local auth. Because as soon as I set the local auth, few things is going to broke. So we are going to read up till here, okay? And then we go to console, which is ready, and we're going to paste the script. Okay, so I set it to write to, and all those things are there. In this parameter, we are not using the role name, so don't worry about it. We have the CosmosDB instance, and then we're going to go back, copy this role def ID. I'll come back to that, how to disable the local auth and the side effects. I'm going to grant access to the root. And then I go back to the script over here, paste. Takes like 30 seconds to a minute. But you can also do, other roles through the UI, just like how we did on the Azure storage or the application inside. But this is something they have it read write only. So that's the assumption. If you use a database, you most likely your application is going to read write. So they define those role IDs. Okay, so it's ready. Now, remember storage also we got some error first time, right? So we may get some error too. So we're going to run it. Yeah, it's accepted. So now you go back to the database. There's no item. Now refresh it. There's one item. Okay, so we got the item. Now the write works. And if you want to read the read, we go back our demo here and then get it. And then we say try it out. And then they try it out. And then our UPN right now, what you paste here is the demo. Copy this value. Put it over here and then execute. P7 is I will only read the partition key. Okay, that sounds good. Now, how do I disable the local auth, right? So if once I disable the local auth, and you no longer can use this Explorer, you giving up this control, okay? So if we go back to my code again over here, and then I'm going to say this command, resource update, we have everything in memory there. We're going to copy it. And then we're going to go back to this console here, paste it. Okay. Well, now you're going to lose this access. Watch it. This may take a 30 minutes window. We've seen it. It's not working faster enough. I don't know why, because it's a database, things like that. But sometimes it takes 30 plus minutes to do the operation. But we'll leave it there. We'll go on, that's the core demo, right? So I show you the application running in a VM, and then it connecting 3 different services, app inside storage and CosmosDB. And you can do the key vault if you want to store this information into a key vault. Whatever we have it over in this particular app, the connection string, right? You can move these things into a key vault, and then you can access the key vault. In this case, you create a secret, you store this value, then grant a managed identity access to get a list. Then you give the secret URL and do it. I can demo you, but you get the concept. But for now, let's go and publish these two as a web app. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on the publishing wizard. I believe I have the .NET 7 app. So I'm going to say Azure next. I'm going to say, let's put on a Windows. It can still work in a Linux, but I will put a Windows. Did not find any Azure subscription. Open account setting. Why? We enter the credentials. And let me complete it and come back, okay? Let's try to put it here.
Hi, you guys. This is Dan. I have one question.
Yeah.
Is there a way to call these the update command asynchronously so then you can come back and look at it, or is that not possible through the CLI? I'm not sure.
Well, like a data or a control update.
Well, when you were updating the local auth.
Oh, so this is local auth, you mean? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you said it takes 30 minutes.
Oh, it is done. It is done. Yeah, it takes time, but this is like a one-time thing you do it, right? So you have to use the CLIs. Yeah, it is done. But now we're trying to run this code over here. It may not work. Settings, and let's refresh this blade. Okay, let's go users. Items, see that? What it says. Local authorization is disabled. Use an AD token to authorize all requests. So you cannot use it. This data export cannot be used. Now you have to take a token and then do, a little weird. You lose that flexibility of seeing the data over here. All right, let me log into. I can sign in. I did not plan to, plan why it says it into. Next. Maybe. Or no, skip this step. Finish. Don't take a long time. It's a tiny code base. Publish. This code will work on Linux too. Okay, now let's run. What is the URL? Capture the URL here. Okay, so that's Swagger, right? So let's go back to the portal. So this is our resource group. And then where is the app? Here is the app. Right here to copy this URL here. Here is the URL. Oh yeah, boy, just doing that. Okay. So and take the remainder part. Something went wrong, but I'll tell you how to enable this access over here. So if I have to enable this access over here, now I have to go back to my app, which is this app, and go to the identity, and which is already turned on. I believe that the deployed wizard did it. And if you want to give access to Azure storage, so you go to the storage, you go to access control, you go to role assignment, add role assignment. Right, so say I'm going to read the blob data reader. Next, and I'm going to give a user identity. And select members. Watch this here. It tells you the app service, and then you select the app service. Okay, that's how you do it. And I click next, and review, and assign. And so why is it print? All right, so there is some errors, but you get the concept. You have to publish it, and then you give the permission to that particular app. Okay, that's how it works. We can troubleshoot later, but that's not our scope right now. Let me go back to the slide deck. Okay, so now, okay. All right. That's the last demo. You can use this concept for every service that we listed over here. You can download the thing. You can download the one that I'm demoing right now from here. If you go there, I stacked it towards the bottom. This hardback API and PowerPoint and everything. And there are some links. Which, if you want to read it, please click through and then read it. Otherwise, thank you for your time and trust. Any question, guys?
I have one question.
Yeah.
So I saw that the managed identity had a life cycle for resources, and then the user managed identity has its own life cycle that you can use for different resources.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a concept of a group managed identity where I can have several users for that one identity, or that does not exist?
Repeat the question. So you have the managed identity, you have the user managed identity.
Is there such thing as a group managed identity, so I can have different users come and go. Let's say I have different entities or organizations. That
It's how you structure your code, right? Most cases, you don't want to deal with the code per user identities, right? No, Dan comes in, he uses this identity, he can only see a read. If Uday comes in, he uses this identity, he can do a read, right? That's you can do that, but that's too much maintenance on the code level. So most cases you got to use read, write, role-based access. But yes, you can mix and match if you want to. So all your code is going to handle it.
Okay, thank you. I was just thinking that for some reason you're offering your customers raw access to your resources, which you probably wouldn't be doing, but who knows? There's always a case for something.
Yeah, it may be a case for something, but the way that the best practice recommends your application to have a read, write, or read, write, right? Read or write or read, write. That's the application you're going to use RBAC, and then that's they call data plane, right? Data plane operations, and then the control plane operations. In our application, we do a control plane operations using the data plane SDK so far, but that is not working anymore because once we put them into RBAC mode, we are not able to invoke any of the control plane operations. So we have the version 1 today. We go to version 1.5. In 1.5, need some index modification, some object creation. We have a little, intelligence built into it. It resolves what version it is. It's trying to create those objects. They are not going to work anymore. When I reached out to Microsoft, what they said was, no, this is for data plane only. If you need a control plane in this mode, you have to run everything in a CLI or some sort of management endpoints. That's only option. That's how you group them. Application take RBAC, administration take the CLIs. But that's still a pain for us. So we still planning to use the key-based access because of this nature. We cannot change the code overnight that go from data plane SDK to CLI-based SDK. So we decided to switch back, but that's the way of they're recommending to use it, but you can use the way you want it. I think that should be fine, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you put